I also wanted to ask you about high dose vitamin C protocols. So vitamin
Yeah.
C is given, IV high dose for a lot of different things, but it's also been recommended by people like Linus Pauling and many others after him for treating, for oral supplementation at very high doses. So does that make sense? Is it something that might work for things like cancer and other chronic illnesses, and specifically for heart disease? Or is there a limit to how much you can absorb?
Both are true. So in cancer, there's a body of literature supporting high dose intravenous vitamin C. It's not really at the level of randomized controlled trials showing efficacy, but there are case series strongly supporting efficacy as far as case series can. And there are animal experiments, and there are lots of cellular studies, probable biological mechanisms. So the likely scenario will turn out to be that high dose intravenous vitamin C brings vitamin C to supraphysiological levels that cannot be replicated orally, that cause oxidative stress and synergize with oxidative chemotherapeutics. Not all chemotherapy is oxidative, but a lot of it is. And so the specific utility would be as a pharmacological drug to synergize with specifically oxidative chemotherapy. Now, and in that case, you definitely want to avoid glutathione being present in the IV. And there is it's an interesting animal experiment where they gave high dose vitamin C or high dose glutathione, or the two of them together in this context. And what they found was that the glutathione inhibited the ability of the vitamin C to restrain the tumor growth, but that both the vitamin C and the glutathione were both having a similar longevity benefit. And so it seems like, despite the fact that the tumors were larger in the animals that got the glutathione, they still had the longevity benefit. So the people who have been doing this research have suggested, and I think this makes total sense, that when you are dealing with someone with cancer who's on an oxidative chemotherapeutic, you pair the high dose vitamin C intravenous with the oxidative chemotherapeutic, and then in between the doses, as far as possible away from the chemotherapeutic, you give the glutathione. And the glutathione's role is to support the tissue, the host tissue, and the vitamin C's role is to synergize with the chemotherapy and killing the cancer tissue. Now there's one other application for high dose intravenous vitamin C, and that's in sepsis patients. And that's a completely, totally diametrically opposite application of high dose intravenous vitamin C, even at the same doses, because when you give vitamin C intravenously to people at high doses that do not have sepsis, their vitamin C levels run to levels that are not replicable with oral vitamin C. Patients with sepsis have such rapid deterioration of their vitamin C that they basically have scurvy levels of plasma vitamin C. And if you give them high dose intravenous vitamin C, it brings their levels barely into the normal range. So that you're doing two wildly different things with the same dose of vitamin C, the same route of administration, those two cases. And then for everyone else, there's really nothing well demonstrated for vitamin C. I mean, I wouldn't call it well demonstrated for cancer. I mean, it's case series for cancer, but there is an RCT for sepsis, the Citrus Alley trial, which suggested that you might cut mortality in half. Most healthy people, or even people who don't have sepsis, are going to fall into the category where high dose intravenous vitamin C is acting as a pro-oxidant, because that's what it's doing in the cancer patients, because they have they have cancer, but they have normal vitamin C metabolism. So normal vitamin C metabolism is, if you give high dose intravenous, you get super physiological levels that are causing oxidative stress and are probably increasing oxalate excretion as well, which is not all that desirable. High dose oral. The thing with intravenous is you can reach doses that would cause diarrhea orally. If you stay below the threshold for diarrhea, you really can't do anything at higher levels than 400 milligrams a day spread across two doses You really can't get any extra benefit from more than that, but you will generate more oxalate excretion in the urine, which is probably an undesirable thing. And there are things that can mitigate that, and a lot of the high dose vitamin C advocates will push back on that and say, well, you're only getting the oxalate because you didn't have, you had these other problems that were causing incomplete recovery of the vitamin C during its recycling, and you can modify those. And that's probably true, but at the end of the day, no one's really demonstrated in the literature any benefit to going higher than that. Even if you look at something like the common cold, for example, the only studies that are consistently positive are people doing extreme athletic work under extreme conditions, where the doses ranged from 250 milligrams to 2000 milligrams. And there's no evidence from those trials that 250 milligrams is inferior to 2000 milligrams. And so I think that's very sort of consistent with all the pharmacokinetic data that are showing oral administration maximizes cellular concentrations, as well as in ex vivo immune function. So when they take the immune cells out of the people who were supplemented and look at how well do they respond to pathogens in vitro, all those things are maximized at a dose of 400 milligrams spread across two doses. And spreading across 2 doses separated in the day helps maximize the absorption as well as the retention.
So you're saying the maximum dose you're certain that can be absorbed by a human being is 400 milligrams a day?
No, you'll absorb more if you take more, but a lot of it, like you'll lose a lot of it in the urine. You won't reach higher cellular concentrations, and you will increase needlessly the excretion of oxalate. So it's not so much the absorption, it's more like the cellular retention of vitamin C is maximized at, well, the plasma concentration as well as the blood cell concentration, both are maximized at a dose of 400 milligrams a day. You are at higher doses than that, you're basically increasing urinary excretion of vitamin C. Now, if someone wants to do a study and look at biopsies of other tissues, then maybe you'll show that there was some tissue that got a higher concentration, but it's doubtful because you're not really raising plasma. You could argue that if you raise, you must be raising plasma at some time point. It's just that it can't possibly be staying high very long, because in these studies you're not seeing the increase. So you might have greater delivery of vitamin C to the brain or something like that, but no one's going to do a brain biopsy to show that.
Right. So there haven't been studies showing that what's going in through your gut, like all of it's leaving through your urine.
There have been those. Yeah, what there are studies using many different doses in head-to-head comparisons, where they look at the plasma response, the blood cell response, and the urine response to the vitamin C, as well as to the oxalate and urate excretion. And actually the DRI for vitamin C, DRI is a general umbrella term for the RDA, as well as the other similar metrics. That's actually based on one of those studies, where what they did was they said, what's the maximum you can absorb without getting a major increase in urinary excretion? And so they placed the RDA at the borderline. I thought that was a little silly, because you can have a higher intake than from the same studies. You can get a higher intake, getting a better plasma response, a better cellular response, and without an increase in urinary oxalate. And so it's like, who cares if you lost some of it in the urine? It's sort of like when they're giving people 200 milligrams a day of iron to treat anemia, they're going way beyond the most efficient route of iron, right? So I was just looking at one of these studies earlier today, where they show that 100 milligrams of iron will lead to 23 milligrams of absorption. If you take 200 milligrams of iron, your percent absorption of the supplement radically goes down, such that you get the 23 milligrams from the first 100 milligrams, and then you get 10 milligrams from the second 100 milligrams. So you take 200 milligrams, you got 167 milligrams sitting in your gut, and you got 33 milligrams absorbed. It's like, if they had a similar mindset, well, I mean, they did. I mean, they didn't set the RDA for iron at 200 milligrams, but I guess what I'm saying is the fact that the most efficient balance between urine and plasma is at the RDA, doesn't mean you're not going to get better immune function if you increase it. So, but if you look at those same studies, what they do show is if you looked for the point of maximum benefit and said, who cares if it winds up in the urine? I just want more in my white blood cells. What they show is that point of maximum benefit is 400 milligrams, right?